Hello and welcome to the Adobe Twitch channel. My name is Terry White, worldwide design and photography evangelist for Adobe, and it's my pleasure to stream to you live here on twitch.tv/Adobe. Today we're back to our two parts. So part one will be actually a continuation of what we did last Friday, which is automating Photoshop. I actually ran out of time. There were still things I wanted to show. So we'll do this first part as automating Photoshop part 2. And then midway through at the 11 o'clock Eastern Time hour, so an hour from now, I'll stop the stream briefly and start up again for our final part 10 of our 10-part series on Introduction to Photoshop CC for beginners. Well, introduction means for beginners. So we'll be doing part 10, which is outputting your images, exporting your images, saving your images for print and web, and all the ways to optimize them that Photoshop offers, and I think some ways that you may not even know about, especially if you're a beginner. So we want you, if you're a beginner to Photoshop, definitely stick around for the second hour. If you're not a beginner for Photoshop, you can still stick around or not. It's up to you. All right, and if you're watching this on the video on demand or replay, this was a live show that happens on Tuesdays and Fridays. So you'll see me look over at my chat window from time to time and say hi to people as well as answer questions. And if you wanted to get your questions answered, then join us live on or join me live Tuesdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. Eastern till noon Eastern here at twitch.tv/Adobe. So we'll kick things off by just, let me look through the chat real quick, make sure I'm not missing anything else. Hey Jan, hey Renee, hey Helmet20, let's see if I missed anybody. Elsie Finch, Dream Float Joe, what's going on? I think I said hi to Rufus already, and everyone else. If I didn't say hi, hello. All right, so let me switch gears and let me show you what we're going to start off on. So today we're going to continue where we left off. So actually I should tell you where we left off last week if you weren't here. So last week we did automating Photoshop, and I spent time on showing how to create actions from scratch, showing how to make them into buttons and to create droplets. And actually it was one of my most well-received episodes since I've been doing Twitch. Tons of viewers, tons of replays, tons of comments after the fact. So that one actually went over quite well. And again, I said it was automating Photoshop in Lightroom. I never even got to Lightroom because we did so much in that first hour. So we're going to definitely pick up where we left off today, and we're going to do more automating. We're going to finish off in Photoshop, and then we'll head over to Lightroom and talk about some ways to automate Lightroom to do the kinds of things that will just get your images ready to go so you don't have to keep doing them manually. All right, so with that said, let me go ahead and switch over to my computer, my pooter. Let's see here. We want to go to number 2. All right, so here I am in Photoshop CC. Actually, I want to do this. There we go. In Photoshop CC, and I want to go over and let's see. One of the first things we'll talk about that I didn't get a chance to show. We'll talk about, and we're going to talk about one of these subjects twice. I'm going to show it here, and I'm also going to show it in the intro part as well. But before we get to that one particular thing, let me finish off with some things under the Automate menu. I'm looking at my notes here, and let's see. Okay, there's a conversation going on in the chat about salmon. I'm not sure why. All right, but anyway, let's go in and let's go to the File menu. Under Automate, you've got some of the Automate commands that have been here for years, one of which is called Contact Sheet. Now, Contact Sheet, it's Contact Sheet 2 now. Contact Sheet has had kind of a rocky history for those of you who are old-time Photoshop users. Contact Sheet has always been there or been there for many years. Then it got taken out because the team wanted to do other things with it, and there was such an uproar that it had to be put back in like immediately. Then it did get its update that they wanted to do, and it became Contact Sheet 2. So what's a Contact Sheet? I don't run this much anymore because I can do what I need to do in Lightroom for the most part, but If you are the contact sheet kind of person, what this is designed to do is to take a folder of images, or choose them one by one, and put them all on the same page for you. And you can have it put in some text descriptions or captions and things like that as you go. So for example, let's go ahead and choose the folder. Wait, hang on, one more thing. So you can choose files or a folder. So if I say files, then I can browse and choose the files I want. I think I want to do that instead of picking a folder. All right, so let me go to my demo files here. And I'm just going to randomly pick some files that I don't really care about one way or the other for contact sheets, but we'll grab them here. I think I got some, those are some Vegas shots. Let's see what else I've got here. London, DC, fashion. I don't know. Again, I don't have anything in particular. Let's do the NYC Sunset Cruise. Now, these are raw files, so they would take longer to process. Actually, yeah, I should probably use something that's going to be quicker. All right. Wedding shots. Some of those are raw files, and some of these are not. All right, so we'll pick the ones that aren't, so they'll go fast. All right, pick those. All right, so we got those. We'll open them up. And so far, I've only picked 5, so it's not going to be that big of a contact sheet. But now you go in and you designate the document size, and more importantly, how many rows across and columns and all that. So first, let's do the document size. I'm going to work in inches, and let's say that I wanted to create one that I'm going to print as either an 8.5 by 11 or an 8 by 10. So we can go 8.5 by 11 in this case. And again, this is just a contact sheet, something to look at. So we don't need it really that high res. But I'll go ahead and bump it up a little bit. We'll make it 144. We'll double it. And RGB color's fine, 8-bit's fine. Now it will make it into layers unless you tell it otherwise. So if you tell it you want layers, then just leave this box unchecked. If you want it to flatten it all, then it'll just make one composite of everything as a single layer. So I'm going to leave the layers in place. And then we get to tell it how to place the images. Across first, meaning start with your first image and then go to your second image across and your third image across, or down. So you can choose either way you want to go. And then the columns. So I'm going to say make it 3 columns, 2 rows. Actually, no, let's do it the other way around. Let's do 2 columns, 3 rows. Because we only have 5. You know what? Let's grab one more image to make it even. We'll do that. We'll do a PSD. All right, so now we got 6 images. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And since we're doing a tall page, we'll do that as well. All right. Now, if your file, you can use your file name as the caption, which is kind of nice. That way, it'll just grab whatever the name of the file is and make it the caption. You can make the caption whatever size you want. So maybe make the caption a little smaller. The captions usually look big at 12 point, so maybe even 8 point. And we'll click OK, and it'll just run. So to open up the images as fast as it can and generate the contact sheet. So it just did it all that quickly to make the contact sheet. And again, because I didn't tell it to flatten it, they're all layers. One of the reasons why you may not want to flatten it is in case you do want to change any of the names. So those came in as text layers, and now I've got this contact sheet ready to go. Why would you want a contact sheet? Well, you may be trying to give this to a client and say, here are all the images I shot, and you can look at them, one by one on the contact sheet. Again, this workflow is so old, I don't do this anymore because there are many better ways to do it, like web and Lightroom mobile and all kinds of other ways. But in case you did, you would do it this way. The other reason we used to use the contact sheet back in the day, if you can remember this, a lot of people would archive their images from a shoot onto a removable media like a CD or DVD. And they would print off a contact sheet, fold it up, stick it in the cover of the DVD, so that way if they ever wanted to know which images were on that DVD, you take the contact sheet out and look, or you put it in a book with the DVD, and you could flip through the pages of the book, see the images, pull the DVD out, and know that they're on that one, or hard drive, or whatever. So that's what the contact sheet was originally kind of designed for photographers and people that need it to put up multiple images on a page so that they can see all the images. And again, I made it fit with 6 images, but you could make the images smaller, put more rows, more columns, and Photoshop will do the right thing by scaling them down. You also notice that there's a mixture of both landscape and portrait images. So Photoshop did the right thing in leaving the amount of space necessary so it didn't have to crop anything off. So that's the contact sheet feature that's been around for years. The version 2 of that, which has also been around for years, just gives you more options in the dialog box. So it's been modernized, optimized, and it still works for people that need to be able to do this. So that's one of the automation features, is just generating a contact sheet. And you can do it from a folder. I picked the files manually, but you could just say, hey, this whole folder of thousands of images, go ahead and generate contact sheets. And once it fills up a page, let's say I still only wanted to do 6, but I had 600 images, it would just keep making new Photoshop files. And so you'd have to also be a little bit careful that you're not generating so many contact sheets that are so large that you don't even have enough RAM to keep them all open. So if it's 60 sheets, 60 documents open in Photoshop and they were all high res, that could certainly start to slow the whole thing down, and you may even run out of room or drive space while it's doing it. So just keep that in mind when you're making your contact sheets, if you ever make them. All right, we're gonna go ahead and close this. That's what the contact sheet feature is all about. And let me see, was there anything else under there? I think we did a photo merge last time on Friday, I'm pretty sure. It might have been something I did at the last minute. I don't even remember doing it now, so let me go ahead and do it real quick. Photo merge and browse for files. I think I kind of remember showing this, but I remember not being able to really get into the details of it because I was running out of time. So let me spend a few more seconds on it this time. Let's see, I want CC demo files, I want Photoshop, and yeah, I remember going through these looking for the Pano ones. I think I did the Iceland one before. Alright, since I did Iceland before, we'll do the Niagara Falls one this time. Or no, Nerica? No, it's not Niagara. This one will do. Alright, so I'll open it. I'll open all those images up. It'll bring them in. And you get the same options. You can do files or a folder. So if you've got all your images in a folder, you just choose the folder. But I chose the files because I didn't want the whole folder. And what's new, I'll run this twice so you can see the difference. What's new is something we used to do. We used to show this as a separate feature manually, but now you can automate it. And that is content aware fill the transparent areas. So that's a fairly new checkbox in CC. I'm going to leave it unchecked. Now I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And Photoshop is automating, bringing in all the images, laying them out, stitching them together, and creating a blending them together. And what you see now is the old problem that we would always have. So in this case, if you want, back in the day, if you wanted to do this panorama, you would either have to decide to manually flatten it down, fill in, use content aware fill on those blank areas, or crop it. You know, you would just lose part of your mountain because you just couldn't have it all with this going up so far, so you'd have to crop it along that line. All right, so let's close this one. Let's run it again. Automate photo merge. And let's browse and get those same files. There they are again. Open them up. And this time we're going to tell it to content aware fill the transparent areas. There it is. All right, so we'll click OK. It's going to do the same thing, put them all together, but you're going to see one more step at the end as to where it's doing the content aware option as it finishes. All right. And that's what it just did. So the areas that were blank now got filled in automatically with content aware fill. Now, is it going to do it perfect every time? No. Because content-aware fill is content-aware fill. It only can do what it thinks it should do based on the surrounding pixels. So in this case, it's showing me, hey, this is where I filled it in. And it's also letting me know, this is where I filled it in. You need to go check it to make sure everywhere you see that the marquee or the marching ants, that it looks good. And up at the top, I'm not concerned. I'll deselect. The top's not bad. But I do see a little bit of an issue down here. Here, I'll zoom in on it, where it did not do such a great job with the content-aware fill. It just didn't get this part right. I can see a little smudge here. This looks good. This does not look normal, and the rest of this. So how would I fix this? Probably with something like the patch tool or clone stamp. So I could go in and I could grab the patch tool and I could just maybe select this area where I'm not happy with the way that came out and just patch it by dragging it over and just getting a better actually, yeah, that's actually okay. And just kind of cleaning this up a little bit where it did not do a good job guessing in this one spot. But even cleaning this one spot up is a whole lot better and easier than having to do the whole thing manually. We're going to make that a little repetitive for now. And we're going to go ahead and pull that in. So you may have to do, what I'm really saying here is you may have to do some touch up, and that's okay. Not every feature will work perfectly on every image. And if we have to do some touch up to fix it and spend a few minutes making that one little area look better, we can. All right. So, and again, I'd spend a little bit more time maybe doing a little cloning here, fixing that one little spot and fixing it down here. So I'd go to the clone stamp tool, option click, and just kind of clean off that a little bit. Zoom in, do a better job, and just kind of clean this up. Same thing here, target that, and just kind of clean up that one spot. No one's going to notice it in the big scheme of things if this were on the wall. But you're going to know it's there, and it's going to bug you that that one little spot over in the bottom right-hand corner isn't perfect. And I would also check up here. I can see a little lightness up here where it may not have blended or content-aware fill that one little area in. So I might use the patch tool to kind of just blend that in a little bit better in that one spot. But otherwise, for the most part, content-aware fill did a great job on this. Everything else looks good. So fixing a couple spots, I now get to take advantage of all the pixels of that panorama to make this look good. All right. Elsie Finch has got jokes. All right, what else? You can see some sky in the bottom left. Closer to the middle. You can see some sky in the bottom left, closer to the middle. All right, I'm not seeing what you're seeing, but if you see it, fix it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and not save that one, and let's move on. So that was Automate Contact Sheet, Automate Photo Merge, and I think there was definitely one I did not get to last week, and that is, well, let me make sure I did everything else I wanted to do under here. So under the Automate menu, we did Batch, we did Create Droplet. There is also PDF presentation, which all this would simply do is take multiple images and turn them into a PDF slideshow, which you can even have transitions. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but you could do that as well. And of course, there's the Merge to HDR Pro and Lens Correction. These are all part of the Automate menu. Now, crop and straighten photos is a nice one, and notice it's grayed out. That's because it only works when you have an image open. It's not for choosing images. What this is designed to do, and I don't even know if I have an example of it. Let me see. Crop and straighten. I don't know if I don't know that I have an example. I used to show this a lot back in the days of Photoshop Elements, but what this would do is, let's say you were trying to scan multiple photos up. You have a big flatbed scanner, I know, back in the day, and you would put multiple images, multiple photos down on it, maybe like 4x6s, and they wouldn't necessarily, even if they were not straight, it would identify each one in that one scan, straighten and separate them out. Now, most scanning software can do that for you now automatically. If you put multiple images down on the glass and scan, it's smart enough to let you either auto detect them and scan them separately, or let you manually choose them and scan them separately. But Photoshop, under the Automate menu, had a way to do that. If you scan 4, 6, 8, whatever images all at the same time, it would automatically detect the edges, strip them out as separate files, and straighten them if it needed to. All right, so that's the Automate menu for the most part. And again, the other one you might do is, well, here we can do Merge to HDR Pro. We'll go ahead and grab this last one. I'm going to go ahead and browse for some files. I should have some HDR examples here. Something should be, because again, most of this I'm doing now in Lightroom, so I don't necessarily do a lot of it in Photoshop anymore. But let's see if I've got one here. Let's go to my photos. All right, I've got an Egypt HDR. The only problem is I don't know which ones make up which. Oh, those are all, okay, I see what's going on. Those are all the ones that are done. Let's close that. We want these. Yeah. All right, so I'll take these 3 images. Now, for those of you who are saying, what's HDR? HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. And if you've ever taken a photograph of a subject against a bright background, like the sun or the window or whatever, you know the problem that you normally get. You get an image that where the camera is not as good as your eye, so it has to figure out what to expose for. Either expose for the person that's dark because there's a bright light behind them, or and blow out that light, or expose for that whatever's in that window, making everything else dark. So that's what HDR is designed to solve. You take multiple shots, one exposed for the subject, one exposed for the background, one kind of in the middle, and or overexposed, underexposed in the middle, and then it would, and you can do more than 3, but then it would let you put them all together so you get the best exposure. So these images were images from a trip I did in Egypt a few years back, and let's see what comes up here. So I shot it on purpose to overexpose it, underexpose it, and do something in the middle. And it's doing those, it's bringing those in now. And these are raw files, so they take a little bit longer. So LC is asking, what's the geometric distortion correction? Is that like fisheye or warp correction? It's like lens correction. So if you've got a lens correction issue, try running the geometric distortion on it. And this is why I do it from Lightroom now. It's so much faster. But Merge HDR Pro in Photoshop gives you more options. So it depends on what you really want. It will take longer to do it in Photoshop, as it has to check for every little thing. And it's putting them all together here. So it's opening up 3 raw files and then merging them together on this final layer. But it will give you way more options for controlling how your HDR looks. So it just really depends on what you're doing. Yeah, the opposite of HDR. So what are the system specs? This is a 2014 MacBook Pro, 16 gigs of RAM. Core i7 quad processor. All right, so here comes the HDR Pro window, and here we are. Okay, so HDR Pro is here. And again, this isn't the best example in the world for an HDR perspective, but what it's saying is I've merged your overexposed, your mid exposure, and your shadowed or your underexposed. And so now where you couldn't see the sky before because you were trying to see this, you can. Where you couldn't see this because it was completely silhouette, you can now. But now you got all these options over here to make this look better. So if I wanted to increase the exposure, I could. And it will start to increase the exposure, but what will happen is it'll start to blow out the sky because I'm increasing the exposure overall. So I tend to not use this as much as I used to because I've got easier, better, faster ways to do it in Lightroom and Camera Raw or Develop module because I can control individual pieces of it. But this is what it was designed to do. Now, if you were trying to create those crazy over-the-top looking HDRs, you've got some presets in here to kind of help you. So if I switch over to Surrealistic, that's what I would get. And again, you may be trying to get that effect, like you were saying, for game creation. So for example, if I wanted to do photorealistic, then I would get this one. And so again, this is why I'm not really using this as much anymore, because while it can do these funky, cool effects, I tend to just make my HDRs look like normal photos at the end of the day. So there's flat, there's city twilight, and these are all presets that are just, you know, cranking up the sliders or cranking down the sliders one way or the other. So if I go back to default, I could click OK, and that will then give me my finished file, and then I can do whatever I want to do with it after that. Also, the other option that this is going to give you is the ability to create a 32-bit HDR. So that's fairly new. You get basically the complete dynamic range of the scene in 32-bit if you really want it to capture every little detail. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Emulate. Chromatic aberration. Yeah, well, again, sometimes we take something that's supposed to look normal and we go the exact opposite end of the spectrum with it. Other times we're taking something that is like over the top crazy and we're trying to bring it back down to normal. So Jan, you're right. Game developers and like for example when HDR first came out and people were really just going crazy with it and going over the top, I personally nicknamed it like the Harry Potter look, because every photo was starting to look like it was from a Harry Potter movie. Just kind of that crazy over the top HDR look, and it kind of even gave HDR a bad name. There were two camps: people that hated HDR and would never use it, and people that loved HDR because they were getting these funky looking over the top images. But I lean more towards the make it look, just use it for what it was technically designed for, making a scene visible that wasn't visible with a single shot. iPhone HDR is hilarious. Well, actually, there are some good iPhone HDR apps that I've used before. They're kind of nice. They're not too over the top, but they're not too, like the built-in one just does a very minimal job of HDR. So I kind of like some of the ones that are out there as far as apps are concerned. So it's doing all this conversion, all this automating. And again, keep in mind, these are large raw files. So if you're saying, wow, it's taking a while, well, it's taking a while because they're big files. All right. All right, so now it's giving me the final scene, and like I said, what I would do now, and I would have got here much, much faster doing this in Lightroom, because I don't need all the extra effects that HDR Pro is going to give me. But what I would do at this point is I convert it to a smart filter first, but just for the sake of getting to it, I would go to the camera raw filter, because while it gave me the merge of the three, I'm not really happy with the end result, the end look. And like most automated things, you probably will want to tweak it a little bit. So once I get into the camera raw filter, then I can play around with individual things. Like, for example, I could go into my effects panel. There we go. Go to my effects panel, and since this was middle of the day desert type environment, I can go ahead and dehaze it and kind of bring out more blue in that sky. Now the other thing I might want to do, go back here and bring up the shadows of this image a little bit better. Just crank up the shadows, get rid of some of the, or bring back some of the brightness in the actual pyramid and sphinx itself. And the other thing I can always do is brighten up individual pieces either with the adjustment brush or the graduated filter or the radial filter, which is what I'm about to do. So I take the radial filter and kind of get it over the image the way I want, and then adjust the settings accordingly. So for example, we don't want to do anything with temperature. We'll put that back to 0. Anything with tint. But I do want to take the exposure not down, but take it up. And there's something else going in here. Yep, we want to take the dehaze off this because we've already dehazed it. Go. And oops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the caps lock there. But now I can adjust that and bring it in and shrink that down a bit and just affect that area of the photo. And also with the brush, I can go in and take it off the edges where I don't want it. Make the brush a little bigger. Not that big, not that big. Getting carried away. My brush is running amok. My brush. I dial the wheel really fast as it's trying to now compensate for it. Hang on, hold on. Let's make that brush much, much smaller. Not letting me dial it back down. There we go. My brush is running crazy, running amok. There we go. Dial it down, dial it down, dial it down. Get the brush where I wanted it to be. And of course now we get back down to too small. There we go. All right. Right there. All right. Okay, so I can pick up and brush out the edges that I don't want. And then add it in to any areas that I did want. So we'll go ahead and say that we want to go back to the adjustment brush here. And the same kind of thing where I could go in and apply the adjustment to just specific areas with the adjustment brush. Pull that down just a little bit. And now I'm holding down the Option or Alt key to get it off the edge where I don't want it. And then I can add it back in where I do. All right, but anyway, that's what I would have done with, you get carried away with the image editing. But that's what I would have done with the HDR so instead of getting this HDR, I would end up getting the one I'm about to apply. Well, I'm glad, VR Spirit, that you're liking not only the Photoshop, but the um, English as well. Okay, so that was merged to HDR Pro, which is another one of the Automate features. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And again, my workflow for HDR is just 10 times faster just doing that part in Lightroom, because as you can see, I don't really take advantage of the HDR Pro features other than 32-bit. That is a nice one, but I would just go ahead and do everything else inside Lightroom unless I needed 32-bit HDR. All right, next, let's go ahead and talk about, we did those. So now let's go to the scripts. And scripts includes a few that are built into Photoshop, and the other ones that are others that you can get as add-ons. So there's a script in here that's been here for a while. It's called Image Processor. And it was kind of designed to be, here, let me open it up. It was kind of designed to be a one-stop shop for processing a bunch of images at the same time. So you can either select the images to open by using images that are already open, select images to process either using the images that are already open, or choose a folder. You can then choose where the processed images will go when you're done. And then you can choose a file type and whatever you want to save it, JPEG, PSD, TIFF in this case. And then you can even run an action on those as well. So as opposed to having to create a droplet or an action that's going to do a whole series of things, or having to run 3 or 4 actions at a time, this would do your sizing and then let you still pick an action to run on it. So for example, if I select a folder, and we'll go ahead and choose one of the other ones we were just looking at here. Let's choose photo. We'll choose that same wedding one that seemed, actually no, we want something with less in it. What do I got in classic cars these days? All right, we'll use this classic car one for now. And then I'll tell it where I want it to put them. So for example, I can say don't put them in the same folder, put them in a different folder. And we'll just put this one out on the desktop. Make a new folder, and we'll call this one Classic Output. All right, and now that I've got the classic output, I've got where it's going to get the images from, where it's going to put them when it's done. Now, what do you want it to do? And one of the main reasons you would use something like this is because it would allow you to quickly and easily take a bunch of images and convert them into a different format. So some of those were PSDs, some of those were RAW files, some of those may have been JPEGs already. But more importantly, I get to also specify a size. Now, again, resizing here, let me see if it does it. I doubt it. Yeah, I don't remember if this will do it proportionally. So let's say I needed these all to be good for video. I needed them to all be 1080p. So 1920 by 1080. Ooh, hang on. Jumped down too far. By 1080. I don't remember if it will stretch them or not. So that's why resize could be tricky if they're not all landscape and they're not all, the same aspect ratio. A mixture might cause an issue. But we can try it, and that way I'll know. I can't remember if that doesn't do it proportionally or not. And then if you want it, you can run an action, which we don't have to, and you can include the ICC profiles if it has them. So let's go ahead and run it. And that script's it will not, okay, so someone said it will not stretch. I was hoping that it wouldn't, but I couldn't remember since it's been so long since I've used this. So here comes one of the first ones. It opened and closed. That's great, Ratzer 123. Here comes the next one, classic, I think that was a classic Cadillac. Okay, and again, sometimes you won't even see the image open because it'll open it, process it, close it right back down. It's only opening them because it has to. It's not trying to open them to show them to you. So if you see it briefly, it's because you just saw it briefly, because your computer was doing whatever it needed to do to show, open it long enough to save it. And if you saw it, oh well. If you didn't, oh well. All right, while we're waiting for this, and it looks like it's almost done, I'm going to do something I've never done on my stream before, but it's because we've got a special event coming up next week. We've got a special, and it's finished, by the way. We got a special event coming up next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's called Creativity 360. And for the first time on my Twitch stream, I'm going to take a commercial break, and I'm going to run the ad for it. So I'll be right back.
Join us live on twitch.tv/Adobe for a 3-day design extravaganza from April 26th to the 28th. Photoshop Hall of Fame Award winner Corey Barker will be creating incredible images and effects with Photoshop. Illustrator Sophie Roach will involve audiences worldwide as she creates one of her beautiful and intricate images. See how Synapse comes up with stunning motion graphics for a video stinger. Follow us on Twitch and learn from these masters and other special guests at the first Creativity 360 on April 26th, 27th, and 28th, only at twitch.tv/Adobe.
Okay, now we're back. So, commercial break, first one in my Twitch stream. All right, so we left off with that running. It had finished right before the commercial break. If we go to our desktop here, let's go to our desktop, and there's the classic output, and here are the images that are in it. It put them in a separate folder for JPEGs in case you were running multiple versions of that. So it made all the JPEGs, even from the RAW files, even from the PSDs, and I told it to be 1920 by 1080. Let's see if it didn't stretch them. It doesn't look like it did. So those are conforming. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're still the right aspect ratio. All that simply means is it's no bigger than 1920 by 1080. It may not be 1920 by 1080, but that was the size that I told it to conform to. So if I were to open one of these up, and I look at the image size for it, it's probably not 1920 by 1080, but it's 1080. In other words, it didn't make it any bigger than 1920 by 1080, so it scaled it down to fit within that. If you needed this to be 1920 by 1080, you'd still have to crop it or adjust it so that it fits both those dimensions perfectly. So keep that in mind, is that the image processor, like for example, I'll give you a perfect example. On my blog, the width of my blog images are 650 pixels. The height can be whatever. So if I were going to run that script to put these on my blog, then what I would do is go back to the image processor, scripts, image processor, and I would go, instead of 1920, I would go 650 by, it could be whatever, it doesn't matter. I could do 750, or I could just say 650. Don't make them any taller than 650, don't make them any wider than 650, but don't stretch them to be square. That's what that means. So if I were to run that again, I'm not going to, but if I were to run that, I would get images that would be sized down to 650 on the longest dimension. That's the best way to look at it. And then I would have images that would fit my blog perfectly. All right. Yep, Michael Chase, I did forget to uncheck that box. All right, so next thing we're going to do is, matter of fact, I'm going to run that later. Let me check one thing here.
April 26th to the 28th. Photoshop Hall of Fame Award winner Corey Barker will be creating incredible images and effects with Photoshop. Illustrator Sophie Roach will involve audiences worldwide as she creates one of her beautiful and intricate images. See how Synapse comes up with stunning motion graphics for a video stinger.
We're going to go
follow us on Twitch and learn from these masters and other special guests.
Didn't mean to click on it again. But what we're going to do is we're going to go in and go to our next thing. So we've got our image generator. Sorry, we've got our script image processor. And the next thing we'll do now is, like I said, we didn't get a chance to talk about Lightroom last time, so let's not spend all the time in Photoshop. Let me pop over to Lightroom. And when it comes to Lightroom, there isn't as much what I would call automation. There is, however, things that will speed up your workflow by allowing you to set up what are called presets. So each module actually has a form of presets. This means that in the library module or the develop module or the slideshow module or the print or the web, I can set up these settings so that I don't have to keep choosing them over and over again. So we left off in Photoshop by using the image processor. So what I want to do is go in and change this to, or here, let me actually select a few of these. Let's select a few of those and let's go to export. And when I go to export, what that will give me the ability to do is export them out any way that I want. So I can export them out in any format I want, any size that I want, and anything I want to do. So it gives me the standard export dialog box. So, however, if I want to specify my settings, so let's go ahead and say I want to pick where I want these to go. So I'll choose to put them actually out on the desktop in another folder. And we'll go to the desktop, we'll make a new folder, and we'll make that new folder and we'll call it Twitch Output. Alright, so now that we've got that folder created, and that's the folder it's going to use for this, we'll choose it. And once I choose it, and I come back here, that's where it's ultimately going to put it. I should update that now. There we go. And I don't need them in a subfolder, just put them in the Twitch output folder. Now I can do anything else I want to do. If I want to rename the files, I can. If I want to specify the file settings, I can. So for example, if I want to specify that they are obviously going to be JPEG, they're going, well, not obviously, you can make them any format you want, but I'm going to put them out as JPEG. I can put them out in any quality I want. So let's say I want them to be full quality, we'll take it up to 100. And I can also specify the color space. So if I want them to be sRGB, which is more applicable for the web, I can do that. And then this is where we get into the resizing if you want them to be resized. I typically would, because the whole reason for exporting them out is to either give them to someone else or to put them somewhere else. So for example, I usually like to do, instead of width and height, I like to do long edge. So let's say you were putting these out on social media, Instagram, whatever. I don't want the edge to be, longest edge to be any longer than 1080 at 72 pixels per inch. All right, so now that I've got that, I tend not to do any output sharpening because chances are I've already sharpened the image at some other point in the workflow. And I've noticed, especially on low-res images that you're exporting, this will over-sharpen if you're not careful. So I tend to not do that. You can also, from a privacy standpoint, remove any or all metadata. So if you don't want your location information about the photos to be included, you could remove that. If you don't care, you can leave that unchecked. If you people tagged your photos, you can remove the person information. All right, here's the big one, and this is kind of where the automation part of this whole process, two things will happen. Number one, what is it going to do after it finishes exporting them? You can have it do nothing. Just do it. Put them in a folder. Don't do anything. Don't tell me about it. Just do it. You can have them show them to you in the Finder, meaning, or Windows Explorer. Show them to you after it's done. And here's some new ones. You can have it open them up in Photoshop. Open them up in another application. So take the photos that I exported out of Lightroom and then open them up in something else for me to do something else with them. But here's another one that is the old school automation way of doing it back in the original Lightroom days before we got open in Photoshop and open in other application. You notice I have one called Mail, Photos, Photo Sync, so forth and so on, and Save for Web, large and thumbnail, Save for Web, thumbnail. You know what these all are? Or at least these last three? These are Photoshop droplets. Because what you can do is you can go to your Export Actions, what is it called? Your Export Actions folder. And that's really just a folder on your hard drive in your preferences for Lightroom. In that folder, you can put an alias on the Mac or a shortcut on Windows to anything. Your mail application, another application, which now applications aren't as important because you can now choose them. So I can actually take these out. But you can put these, you can put in an alias to a droplet, or actually put the droplet in here. And whatever you put in here, the next time you run that export feature, they will show up for you to be able to choose for how you want your images, once they're exported out of Lightroom with all those other settings, what you want to happen to them next. So the Export Actions folder, that's what it's for, and whatever you put there will show up down here. So it updated instantly. I took out those three, or those two or three, and it updated this. So I'm just going to have them showing in the Finder, but the other thing is, so that I don't ever have to remember to do this again, I can say Add, and I can call this whatever I want and put it in whatever folder I want. So I can say Twitch Output. Create a preset for it, and then when I go ahead and export this out, it'll do it for the ones that I've got selected, but it would also save that as a preset. So anytime I select images from now on in any collection, any folder, from this point forward, I can just go to File, Export, and choose that preset. I don't have to bring up that dialog box and change those settings or choose those settings every single time. So that's what the export presets are for. So it's exporting those three files from their original source, which is on a file server right now, large PSDs, so it's doing the export. And again, that's a background process. So there's nothing stopping you from continuing to work. I don't have to keep those three images selected. I don't have to wait for that progress bar to finish. I can just keep working and let it keep doing its thing without me having, I can even start another export and it will just stack them up as different processes that are running in the background. But this one finished, and or is finishing, and now it's bringing up the Finder to show me those three images that got exported based on the settings and the sizes and everything that I told it to do. Another export option would be to, I don't know if I did it for these or not, let's see, I did not, but another export option would be, let's pick some more. Actually, let's pick this one and this one, and let's go File, Export again. All right. And I'm on that Twitch Output Export option, so I can also go in and say that I want to, I skipped over it, but let's say that I want to go in and choose watermark. So you can also have it, add a visible watermark to the images that you're exporting. So if I check that, I can say that I've got a watermark, a stamp that I've already created. It can then watermark those images well. Now you notice that the minute I made a change, the Twitch Output setting unhighlighted, meaning it said, oh, nope, you did something different. This is not what you call Twitch Output, because you're now changed an option. You checked the box, you did something. So if I wanted to update Twitch Output with this new setting, then all I'd have to do is right click on Twitch Output, and when I right click on it, there's Update with Current Settings. And so when you choose Update with Current Settings, oh, it's highlighted again, and now that becomes the new module. Or you could have just added another one that said Twitch Output Watermark. So whichever way you want to do it. So now it's exporting those two images out, but these two will actually be watermarked instead. All right, so we're coming up to the end of the first hour. We got like 2 or 3 minutes left. Like I said, at the end of this hour, or right near the end of this hour, I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream so I can recalibrate, reset up for the next hour, which is going to be Introduction to Photoshop. It's going to be along the same lines, but it's going to be Photoshop, of outputting your images and all the ways of outputting your images for both print and web. And that's what that's going to wrap up our 10-part series on Introduction to Photoshop for beginners, obviously, and all the things that beginners typically want to know how to do or struggle with at times. All right, so let me check the chat here. Beetlejuice's stream starts at noon Eastern, so in an hour from now. Hour and 4 minutes for the person that's asking. And what about auto-changing the name? Well, if you wanted to rename the files, you could. So I could have said, change the name in that export action or export set, preset to change the name to a specific name and number or whatever else you want to automate as part of that. So, but you could absolutely do changing the name as well. All right, you know what? I'm going to do one more thing while we're waiting, because we don't have to wait to see that. I'm going to select another photo. I'm going to pop over to the print module here. And I just want to point out something in the print module that often also gets overlooked as far as part of the automation features that you could be doing with Lightroom. And that that particular thing is that in the print module, while we're waiting for it to export, switch over, run stuff in the background, but while we're waiting for that to happen, the print module itself is not, people think of print as, oh, I don't even own a printer, or I don't want to output these on paper. But the print module is, think of it as a designer for the, and here come the photos, by the way. So the photos just exported out, and think of the print module as a way of designing the output of your files, and that's the one with the stamp so you can see it. But think of the print module as a way of designing your files, as I've done here. I just selected 3 images. I created a setup here based on number of columns, spacing, so forth and so on, using a watermark, not using a watermark. And these can also be presets that you choose from. So I've got one, let's see if I got another one here. Let's do 3 up tall, 8 by 10. I thought I had one that was for a black, oh, there it is. 3 up wide with a black background. So that will give me the images, and the images are even, you can move them around in the frames. So if you wanted to recompose them in the frame to a more interesting spot in the frame, you can do that. You can move the image around and say that, now see, that looks a lot better, just showing that particular side of it. All right, and so like I said, this isn't just for print. If I were to now, and we're at the end of this hour, but one last thing real quick. If I were to go down to the bottom of this, I've got it set to not go to a printer. I've got it set to print to a JPEG file. So I can say print to file, and it will take this, automating the look and feel, because I saved this as a preset, and outputting actual JPEGs that I can put on social media or whatever. So if you're ever trying to stitch pictures together for social media or printing or whatever else, the print module is not just for going straight to paper. All right, so with that said, that wraps up the first hour of my stream, which was Automating Photoshop and Lightroom Part 2. We finally got to the Lightroom part of it, and there's always more to show. And with that said, I'm going to stop the stream, and I'll be back in just a few seconds. If you're watching live, you don't have to go anywhere. And if you're watching a replay, there'll be another replay for the second part. Take care.